Hi, everyone. Welcome to Design Your Life, the podcast where we talk with everyday people about living with intention and creating a life that's true to them. We talk about happiness, not as something to chase, but as something to uncover within through self acceptance and love. Each episode will explore mindful, practical ways to reconnect with who you are and design the life you truly want to live. So, with that said, I'm your host, Jim Mantler. And I'm super excited today to have with me and to welcome Alex Tabler. So, Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank
I'm
you.
so excited to have you as our first guest here at Design Your Life. And would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. My background. So right now I'm living in New Brunswick, but I am originally from Alberta here in Canada. So I feel like where we grow up and that shapes a lot of our life experience. So that's why I say that. And I've gone through a lot of change to be able to come here. I have a background in aesthetics. I worked in the spa industry for quite a while and I loved kind of caring for people. But then I realized I wanted to try and make more impact. And I went into social work, and social work led me through to kind of holistic healing practices and and so I love growth. I love okay, I don't love change. It's hard, but I love growth, which means change. And I
Yes.
love transformation. And so I've found myself appreciating being able to create a sense of connection or belonging, but places for growth. So that's a big part of who I am for myself, but also what I like to bring to the world around me.
Nice. That's beautiful.
Hmm.
Well, again, we're super excited to have you, and and as mentioned in the in the introduction, our focus is on learning more about how others design the life that they're meant to live. So, with that said, what does designing your life mean to you personally?
Hmm. Um, Designing my life. Well, when I hear designing my life, I feel like we get to kind of control and take charge of it. Kind of get to orchestrate our own life, and I also feel like we are kind of co-creating our life in many ways.
Hmm.
So, although these pieces that are um, we're getting to design, we're having to like work with stuff that's already coming to us. So when I think of like my life experience, I can't really change the experience that has maybe happened to me, but I get to work with what it was. So I get to design based on what I'm working with. So
Right,
yeah.
right. And what tools or practices help you stay in that mindset of conscious orchestration? Especially when life feels chaotic.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So it's funny, right now I'm going through some interesting changes for myself. And so when I was thinking about coming on, especially today, I was like, what have I been using recently? And so it's been in the forefront of my mind. And I keep coming back to this idea of trust is a big part. Keep coming back to that. I've used a lot of practices to help me kind of on my journey, but I find how can I be in the present moment? And so for me, that's turning back to my body. That's coming back to a sense of safety within myself, um, and a sense of trust in the capacity. Like when I look backwards, I can see how clearly everything has unfolded. And although right now it feels a little uncertain and confusing and even emotional, but when I look backwards, I'm like, right, it's all going to unfold. Even if I'm uh, confused or worried, I can have that trust as well. So, so yeah. And then, of course, taking care of myself, taking care of my body, and listening is really
Right.
important. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel you've always had a say in your life's direction?
Yes. and no. Because I say that because, yes, because I am the one making the choices, but the choices that are in front of me, I don't feel like are always the choices that I've chosen, in, if that makes any sense. So, um, moving to New Brunswick was an interesting uh, journey. I knew I wanted to move. I knew I wanted to try something different. I knew I wanted to get out of the big city. And so I knew these pieces. And then sometimes these pieces of knowing just happen and that
Right.
feel like they're even outside of me, where it's just like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And so sometimes it can feel like there's like, divine orchestration of like a direction. And it, my internal self, my highest self, whatever, might be a part of that. But when you hit those moments of just knowing
Right.
and you're able to kind of go with that flow. So there's that aspect where sometimes I feel like it's not in my control, but I get to look at what's in front of me and be like, okay, what would feel good? Like what lights me up, or where do I feel aligned? And just kind of like tune into what, yeah, is in front of me. So I don't always get to choose what's in front of me, but I do get to choose what I do with what's in front of
Oh,
me.
right. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And has or was there a specific moment or experience that pushed you to redesign your life?
Yeah, I feel like, and I'm always so curious. Like I'm so excited to actually continue listening to all the stories that come on here, because I would love to. I look forward to hearing like the stories that weave through, because I feel like I've had many moments in my life where um, there were moments of time to change. So
Mm.
um, a big one came when I was working in the spa industry, and a lot had been going on with my family. My brother struggles with addiction and lots of mental health. And he was in this moment where he was like, I want help. And so it's like me and my mom were like, okay, how do we find help? And we went around searching for help. And it was really hard to find. But finally, we found someone who was able to give us some information. And I was like, oh, like I appreciated it that they were able to be really clear, direct, and give us the information that we needed. Um, and I thought, oh, I want to be that. I want to be someone who can help navigate these resources. The system is so complicated. And so I would love to be able to be that person. But I don't want to go back to school. So when I was working at the spa, this person came in and started talking about this 2-year social work program. And I'm like, what, a 2-year program? I could do that. I think I could do that. And so, I just kind of like let that ponder in my mind. But I was still nervous because I've always really struggled at school.
Right.
And so another client came in and told me about this psychoeducational test she had just gotten done to get diagnosed with a learning disability. And so she's
Hmm.
able to get accommodations in school for post-secondary. And I'm like, what? Maybe I should do that. And I did. And so then I was able to get these accommodations that gave me a level of confidence going in, and supported me through my process of doing post-secondary. So there was this, you know, this moment where I'm like, I want to do something different. I need to do something different. And once that kind of knowing came, it's like everything just kind of fell in place. And I got given all the things I needed to make the choice to follow that knowing. And I feel like that's happened many times in my life. Um, and that's where I'm like, I know I'm not the one orchestrating it all the time. I'm a part of it. Mhm.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what you said earlier about orchestrating your life, but the universe kind of has its design for you as well. Would you say that were you thinking about a life change at the time, or did you feel like you were stuck stuck, or do you feel like that stuff
Mhm.
came into your life? Like the individual coming in to tell you about the course and all that. Can you pinpoint what happened first, or is it just a matter of just knowing that or seeing the signs, or being
Mm.
open to not missing what's in front of you, I guess.
Mhm. That's a great question. I feel like when I'm thinking of all the times where a big change has happened, I've been wanting it. And so started being open to the idea, I think, because I loved working in the spa. I really enjoyed it. But there were aspects of just knowing I wanted to do more, and I kept seeing it in my family. And I'm like, I want to do more. I want to do more. But all these blocks. But then it makes me think of there was, I'd been on this big trip. I had burnt out from social work, and this beautiful change of events happened, um, that I, hmm, I came back from my trip and I was totally like lost and disconnected.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't fit into this life anymore. I don't know what to do. I was
Mhm.
very depressed. Um, Nothing felt familiar or okay anymore. And I've always kind of dealt with depression, and it was kind of like at a peak.
Right.
Usually traveling and going away made me feel better and I could come back into
Right.
life. But this time I couldn't come back. Um, and so I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. And I said to myself, okay, you get a year. And after a year, if you decide you don't want to be here anymore, you can kill yourself. And I'm like, but you have to try. And I didn't know what that meant or what that looked like. And so it's funny because I went into my chiropractor and I had just started crying and was telling him about how I felt. And he told me about this one person, which then opened up a door to like this other thing. And then I was connected to breath work. And then I was connected to this Buddhist community. And then like as things unfolded with breath work, and I was able to like tap into these places of myself, um, things were able to change. But the thing is, it's like once I was like, no, I'm ready for something different. I don't know how, but I want something different. It was like as if either I believe that, the
Right. Right.
divine timing of people coming into my life to support me was just the teacher comes when you're ready. And it could just be a person on the street saying something to you, and giving you a tidbit of information. You get those messages from people, and the support came, and it just kind of all unfolded in a messy way for a while. But I felt really stuck and hopeless, and I just knew something had to change. So I had to reach out for some kind of help. And it's in those small places where you reach out for help that more help can come, and you can start trusting that help. So, I'm like, I don't know if that answered the question.
No, I mean, you said a few things that's important. I mean, one, I kind of want to point out is, you obviously felt so stuck to the point where, you were questioning life itself.
Hmm.
And you mentioned when you got back from your trip, feeling that way, and you were giving yourself a year,
Hmm.
um, which I just want to dive into that a little bit because it's giving yourself a year to live. And it was an intentional choice that you
Hmm.
were doing, but you were very depressed at the time, is from my understanding. And so, what was the biggest realization? When you had returned from the trip, like how did you begin that process of reimagining your life after that, like such a misalignment?
Hmm. Um, I, well, like I kind of had been pointing to, I had to start asking for help. I think was the big thing. And I had to follow points of interest. So I knew I loved yoga. I enjoyed dancing, so I found all these different communities, but it literally became this big unfolding of my spiritual path. And um, so this moment where I had a breakthrough was during, I've been doing breath work for about a year, and I've, found it was really helpful and supportive, but I did an intensive over the course of a weekend. And I had this breakthrough that came, and it was that the pain always ends, because breathwork can be kind of painful sometimes. And I was in a lot of pain. And I needed to stop. Like, I just needed to stop. It was so painful. And a facilitator come over and touched my hand and said, like, yeah, you can stop. You don't have to, work so hard, or whatever she said. And, or hold on. And as the pain started to dissipate, I was like, the pain always ends. And so from going through having so much emotional pain, it was like the first time I felt light in the darkness. Um, and so that's like a phrase that I keep with me, that the pain always ends.
Right.
So when I'm in a confusing part, a painful part, um, trying to remember that first of all, there's moments where there'll be bits of light that will come through, but also that it will end, like the hard parts will end, has been a big part of that piece that I keep reminding myself.
Right, right. And just for those listening and watching, what is breath work? What, like when you say breath work, what is that exactly? Because you mentioned that as kind of something that you've gotten into to kind of help with, designing your life and on your journey. What is breath work?
Hmm. Yeah, breathwork is a somatic, like body-based practice. So you're breathing, but you're using a conscious, connected breath pattern that actually activates our body to enter into a bit of a fight-flight pattern, so that you can access old stresses and traumas. But the way that breath affects like the chemistry in the body, it also has the ability to allow us to we're entering into an altered state of reality, so that we can move through and process or experience either what's either happened in our body or that we've held in our body due to emotional situations or traumas arising. And so as we begin to integrate those painful pieces, we can allow for bigger parts of insight to arise. And so that's a big part of healing, is just integrating. And so the breath allows you that opportunity.
Okay, excellent. So and we'll just go back and touch on pain always ends, because obviously as you're moving through life, and you kind of found a more positive or path that was working for you. But as we know, life kind of throws us challenges, and it's not always easy, especially when we're, going down a new path and trying something new.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes easy to kind of get back into the same old ruts, and, in the same thought process. So what challenges, internal or external, did you overcome on your journey to a more intentional life? Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Um, I would say one of the biggest pieces that I've only actually found in the last few years is working towards self-love. People, we always hear like how important that is. And I think so many of us don't actually, it's so hard to get there, right?
Mhm.
Just due to stress, trauma, conditioning, life situation.
Right.
And, but it's a real thing. It's a real thing. And I feel like navigating lots of painful, maybe relationships, and always kind of looking for love outside of myself, was a really big thing to wake me up into needing to take care of myself. Because it's really hard when you're searching outside yourself for something, for people to give you something
Right.
that it puts a lot of pressure on the relationship and not always healthy. So once I was able to understand that piece, it was huge. But accepting, I feel like self acceptance and accepting where I was huge. So many times, and especially in like my darkest times, it's like I didn't want to be there. I was judging myself, shaming myself. I'm not depressed. When I had a counselor that suggested I might be depressed, I was like, maybe. It was an interesting journey. Um, but I would push it away. I would push it all away. I don't want to be that. That's not me. Um, just because of the shame that comes. And so as I would begin to accept these moments of pain and actually just let myself be in the deep grief and sadness, or be in the deep sorrow, or in the rageful state, and like feel it, not just like ruminate about it, because that's the easy part, but that's a downward spiral. But when I started to really feel it, and the more I could allow that to be okay, the faster I could move through things. And so fostering a sense of acceptance for where you are or what is was huge, and still is huge to this day. I keep thinking, like, for example, in this moment, in this change I'm experiencing, like I've just moved into a new place, and I'm not sure about my work situation right now. And it, it affects my identity, like both of these situations, in so many ways. And I'm like, what direction do I go? Is this okay? How does this feel? And so I'm just kind of having a lot of things come up, and I don't want to be in this place, right? But the more I'm like fighting, not wanting to feel these feelings, the more they grip. And
Yeah.
so that acceptance of just being where I am, like, okay, I'm in this time that is confusing, and okay, feel it. Do you feel it rising up in your body? Can you be with it? Um, I would say is one of the biggest things that's helped me move through. But once you start accepting these parts, they're not so scary. Um, and you can start to see that they were just these parts trying to get heard and seen. And that's even where more love comes in.
Right.
um, and and yeah, so acceptance has been a big one that I've had to learn, in this
It's
process.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that. It resonates with me quite a bit. A little bit about my past through our conversations and work that we've done together. And yeah, we build these personas or these masks, and they're all different for everybody based off, what we're brought up in, how we're raised, and what environment we're in, right? And it's so true because I'm on my own journey as of now as well, and self acceptance was also a big one for me. Just like, and I love what you said about, we're trying to avoid who we are. Like you
Hmm.
mentioned, that's not me, and we don't want to be this person. But to really be able to sit with that and allow yourself to be that person because we are that person. Whether we
Hmm.
built that persona ourselves throughout time or whatever the case, doesn't mean we can't shed it and, remove the mask and be something different. But to your point, we have to be able to sit with who we are first, before we can make any changes. And I love how you alluded to also not finding love externally. And I think that's so hard for so many people, myself included.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but man, what a shift when we're able to love ourselves authentically and who we are. And I don't know if you ever heard of Alan Watts, but I've been listening to a
Mm.
lot of his audio books, and there's one called uh, Out of Your Mind, I believe. I may have got that a little wrong, but anyways, he gives a great example, just about life. If we think of life as flowing down a stream, and a lot of times we get stuck on the past, and it's like holding onto a boulder, trying to swim back upstream, and not being able to let go of that. And you just fatigue yourself, right? And burnout, as you alluded to when you were in your old jobs. So you're burning yourself out. Or if you're looking too far down the stream towards the future and trying to steer yourself, you're missing all this beautiful stuff around you and kind of, who you really are. And it's just, sometimes we just got to let go to the universe, as you say, and
Mm.
just be who we are and be okay with that and just kind of be in the present, right? And yeah. So, anyways, thanks for sharing that. It's a
Mm-hmm.
great example. And what helped you like push through those moments of doubt or difficulty? Because obviously, we talk about this, and it sounds so simple, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously we're very attached to our mind and our thoughts and our our process that we built for ourselves. So what helped you push through those moments of doubt and difficulty?
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing that I started to realize was important was asking for help because um, letting other people help you, letting other people love me, um, I think was a big thing because every time I did it alone, every time I've done it alone, I stay there longer. And when I've actually started reaching out for help, whether it's through counselors, whether it's through friends, whether it's alternative therapies or just activities, when I actually start reaching out to kind of get out of my own way, but to get other people's support and helping me navigate, um, has made a big difference. And um, when we can trust that there are people in our lives who actually love us for who we are, for our messy
Right.
self, that see our potential as well and want us, when we can like have people like that in our lives, it's easy to lean on them and trust them when we can't trust ourselves, or that's how I've felt. And I've had times where I've been really low, and kind of the last big low, well, I've had many lows. Depression is a big part. I think we all have many lows. I
Oh,
always worry that it's like my negative self. But on those low parts, and I had this big low after a relationship had ended a few years ago, and I was out here in New Brunswick, and it was so bad. It was so low, and I was just trying to feel it all. And I reached out um, to my breathwork teacher and his partner, or yeah. And I was on a call with them, and they're like, "Do you need us to come out there, Alex?" Like they were so loving and supportive, just holding the space for this painful, messy Alex, but also like, if you need us, we will be there. And just recognizing who your people are, who don't need you to be any different, is huge. I think that's something that we have a I've had a lot of people in my life who are here for a very specific reason, and maybe they're not like my people, but when you find your people, and I think we'll know that when we find them, but and they can hold that container, and I can lean on their trust when I can't trust
right.
myself. Because sometimes when I'm in that darkness, I can't see. I can't trust that the pain is going to end. I can't trust the universe. When you're in those really dark moments
Right.
or really confusing, messy moments, it's like tuning back to those people who know me, who know my heart, who know my capacity and my ability. And it's like trusting them, leaning on them. So the connections in my life have been a big part. Being able to ask for help and reach out when I am struggling, has been a way for me to navigate.
Yeah, and I believe you alluded to it earlier as well. Is when you're looking for help, is you may not be able to find it right away, but don't stop looking. You mentioned about your family back in Calgary, just not getting
Mm-hmm.
the help right away, and you continue to look. So it's important not to just give up if you can't find it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to point that out. There's
Yeah.
many places we can seek for help, whether it be friends, family, social
Mm-hmm.
groups, or stuff like that. But for anybody out there looking for help, don't just stop looking because yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it may take some time. And I think that was your case as well on a couple of your examples, right?
Yeah.
It didn't just come right away when you started looking, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. being open to it. So for many people, when you're feeling suicidal, you don't usually tell your friends, or I've many times in the past, if I've talked to friends about it, they kind of, oh, we shouldn't feel that way. Like, oh, like you have everything to be grateful for. Like, why are you, like, you have such a great life, or you have this and this. And it's like, oh, I can't talk to you about it. And so then you feel even more alone.
Yeah.
And I've even had counselors that have been very triggering, um, and judging me for having the feelings that I have and being in helping professions, that I shouldn't be that way, or I shouldn't feel those feelings, or like, why am I? And it brings back that shame of like, oh, I'm so screwed up.
Right.
I shouldn't be helping anyone. Um, so you can literally find supports that aren't supportive, but that just means those aren't your people. That's not the right thing for you. And to keep looking, because as I said, I talked to my chiropractor, and they ended up being a support. Well, if you don't have a chiropractor or haven't found, a support, well, then look for someone else, right? Maybe, um, like in the random places, you can find someone who does want to listen, who can see those positive aspects and hold that for you. But
Right.
if you just look in the very most common places and you're like, no, that didn't work, that didn't work, it's like, okay, keep looking, keep trying, because eventually you're going to find something that does work. But it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be convenient.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And I want to circle back just a minute as well because you mentioned about when you're having challenges, suicidal thoughts. It's important to point out that like you were having those while you were in a profession of helping others.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to what you said about accepting who you are and not judging yourself or because we're all individuals, no matter what we're doing. We all go through the same stuff, and it's really the goal of this podcast and this show is really to reach out and make and we want to try to touch people in a way that they understand that we're not alone. It doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
what industry you're in or what you're doing for a living. I believe we all have um, challenges that we go through in life, and we feel so alone because of that self judgment that we do on ourselves. That hey, I
Yeah.
shouldn't feel this, or like I'm not allowed to feel this because I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing this, or I'm seen as being this, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's just such a shame that we are our own worst enemies
Mm-hmm.
time. So yeah, so I just want to go back and allude to that it's okay to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And, it doesn't matter what we're doing or who we are. We all have these similar thoughts and beliefs, and it's okay to be with it, as you mentioned earlier, and be able to accept that of yourself and not
Mm-hmm.
judge yourself. Because I think that's the hardest thing is not judging ourselves and forget about everybody else
Mm-hmm.
judging us.
Yeah.
We're probably our own worst judge, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so I just want to kind of circle back to that and allude to love yourself, accept yourself, for all that you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I love Brene Brown talks about it as well in one of her videos, around like trust and building trust with ourselves and others, and um, that if we judge ourselves, you can bet we're judging other people. and
yes,
so and so one way to also, um, navigate that is to work on compassion, compassion for others, right? And so I feel like, um, I know we've talked about this before, but I know on my journey, a big part of my journey has been, compassion and compassion for others. So growing up in a home where there's been addiction and mental health, but I love my family so much and I could see all the amazing things about them, but there were just these pieces that just were like, why were they doing these things? But I love them so much.
right,
So I could have this compassion for others in a way that surprises me, which makes me good at what I do in many ways, because I can see all the darkness, I can see all the crappy parts and still see all the good.
Right. Right.
And I feel like that has been a big part of my journey, is being able to see that stuff and still love and see the good, which has been a big part of me then. And I'm feeling it like coming up in my chest. Like I always think of my brother. And, but how much that if I didn't have like the family that I had, I wouldn't have been able to have the compassion that I have for everybody that I've ever worked with. And I've been able to start to give that to myself. And I think that's that piece of when we can feel it and let ourselves feel it, that acceptance and compassion for ourselves when we're in these shitty places is what also helps bring self-love.
Right.
Like, so never did I realize that, you know, my childhood would be exactly what I needed to be able to find all the richness of life, that I have now.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great segue. Tell us what brings you joy now, genuinely, genuinely, and consistently.
Hmm. Um, well, I love talking about growth and about like the intricacy of like life and meaning and all that stuff. So that actually brings me joy. But I love feeling in my body. So I love music. I
Mhm.
love dancing. So I love singing and dancing. I'm not like a singer, but I love like putting some music on and like being able to dance and like move my body. So like feeling my body and moving it to music is like one of my favorite things. But like laughter with friends, or even actually tears with friends, genuine connection
Right.
with
Right.
people I care about, or just people in general, when it's a genuine sharing of selves. I like that word when you talk about masks, like all the masks that we have to wear. And, as those start to dissolve and fade or change or integrate, then we have like, we're vulnerable because we don't have the masks on, but then it allows for that really authentic connection in those moments. And that makes my heart smile, because joy is vulnerable. Joy
Right.
is vulnerable. And um, so yeah, dancing, moving, music, deep conversation, deep things like that, and just like laughter with friends.
So you may have already answered, but through that answer is how do you express your true self now, creatively, emotionally, spiritually?
Hmm. That's a big one, and I try to show up as my authentic self, which
Mhm.
means if I'm not feeling well, I'll talk about it. I'll show my emotions regularly. And when I say that, I don't mean, well, like, um, like even in this moment when I was saying like, oh, I'm feeling this in my chest, and
Right. Right.
I could feel everything coming up. And that's how I talk in my daily life. I'll talk about what's coming up. Um, and I will be with others when they're in it too. So I want that in my life. And so when I get to show up that way, I hope others feel that. So I like to express what's coming up for me. Um, and yeah, be as authentic as possible. So that's showing my emotion, saying what's going on, saying what's not okay too, if I'm uncomfortable, if something's not feeling
Right.
okay, because that's authentic as well. Not that somebody has to change or be different, but maybe I need the situation to be different, or just recognize that something's not okay.
That's important.
Um, yeah. So I love that I have many interests and ideas, and so I get to dabble in everything. So like I have my static dance, I go to women's circles, I um, have my breath work and, other business aspects that I'm growing. And then my job where I get to, engage in like social justice type stuff. And then I have like my family and my friends and things that take care of my body. And so just trying to enjoy all the things that bring me joy and share myself with others.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'll go off script here a little bit, only because you threw a lot out there, and and I'm only bringing this up because most people would hear that, man, you're busy. How do you enjoy life or take time for life? And it's part of that accepting who you are. Because for me, we'll say 5 years ago, I always try to make myself busy and successful, and I was doing all this stuff, and I felt like I was losing time instead of being in the moment, right? And that mental
Mm-hmm.
shift shifted now. So I want to point that out because some people listening to that might be, how do you have time for yourself? But that is your time. That's your moments. That's
Mm-hmm.
all the things that you enjoy doing. So time is no longer even relevant, in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I didn't just spend 16 hours doing all this busy stuff. I spent six. No, I didn't spend any. I was just being in the moment, doing everything I love to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just want to allude to that because you sound
Yeah.
busy, but you're not busy. You're loving being present, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And just to say, like, I know right now in my life, I do feel busy. And that being said, like one of my favorite things to do is to, like, right now with it being summer, like
Mhm.
sit outside and like just feel being outside. So if I can do whatever I'm doing outside or by a window, where I get to be in nature or have nature around me, that makes the busyness slow down. Like I feel like, and then I do take time for myself. Where I'm like, I'm gonna go for a walk by myself and do my things. Um, and you have to find balance, but yeah, when I enjoy it, it's like, oh no, that filled my cup. That made me feel really good.
Right, right.
Um, hmm
And I'm just going back here because you mentioned dance, and what has movement or dance taught you about your relationship with your body or your emotions?
Oh my gosh. So, mm, yeah. Well, everything is in this body. Like the body keeps score, is a real thing. So
Cool.
we do store a lot of trauma in our body, which as a child, I was the kid who loved like jumping and spinning. I would, and then I joined dance and I was the worst dancer in the dance class. And so I was just like, oh, I'm not going to dance. And then, as a teenager, like I'd never dance at a dance except for slow dancing. And then I couldn't dance at the bar unless I was drinking. And then it was when I started my journey of like really feeling like I should be pushing my comfort zone. Like I really do believe life isn't meant to just be comfortable. You're going to get stuck in stagnancy. So it needs to maybe push your edges of growth, right? And that's when I started doing more body-based work. Like it started with yoga and then, like breath work and dance. But to be able to see how my body chooses not to move shows me a lot. Like if I'm in a place and certain parts of my body don't want to move, I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay. And so I can encourage it or I can let it be. And there doesn't have to be a right or wrong, but it has encouraged more self expression and more self acceptance, because there's so much shame. There has been so much shame trapped in my body.
Hmm.
And I don't want people to like that's to see people to have people watch you dance. Dancing is self-expression at
Right.
its like most vulnerable because we all do it differently. We're using our bodies, which we have lots of conditioned ideas around, and people can judge us very easily because we can't wear a mask. Like we can do our fake dancing maybe or whatever, or not fake. That's but our masking dancing versus our expressive dancing. Um, so yeah, it's allowed me to learn to feel more deeply in general, and it's allowed me more trust in my body and in myself to express myself more.
Right, right. And you mentioned at the start, body keeps a score. I just want to go back to that because for anybody watching, if you've ever had trauma in your life, I highly recommend picking up that book. It is
Mm-hmm.
a long read, but it's well worth understanding how your body does indeed keep the score. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so we'll be back to that. So now, on your journey today, how have love, compassion, or acceptance played a role, in now shaping your life's path?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know I've kind of like touched on these, and they are the because when you had originally mentioned these words to me, I was like, oh my god, these are what bring life full circle. um, Whether it's compassion, love, and acceptance of others, or love, compassion, acceptance of self. And um, if you can work with one of them, right, it can help lead to the others. But for myself, um, that compassion for others, and acceptance of others and love for others, and then giving it to myself has been huge. And just because I have a bigger awareness, and I am where I'm currently at, that doesn't mean I'm not going to have hard times. That doesn't mean that things aren't confusing and challenging. That doesn't mean the rug's not going to get pulled out from under me at times, or I'll not struggle. So continuing, like, you don't just like have it.
Right.
Well, it feels like you just have it, but then you hit the bump and you're like, I don't have it. It was a lie. And so it's like that constant remembering, like the constantly coming back to it. Um, and I feel like the way to keep coming back to it is to give it to others, and then give it to yourself. So, like, I have this friend, and we do a gratitude practice together.
Mhm.
And that's been a big part of my life, is gratitude in the last few years, working with gratitude. And every time I'm writing it out, it's about the love, either of myself, like the appreciation for things I've done for myself, or appreciation of parts of myself, or appreciation, love for others or nature. Like, there's just like, it cultivates that appreciation and remembering, so that acceptance, love, and compassion just kind of continues to swirl through. Because I really think, like, I love those three. They're like a trifecta. I love it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you mentioned you have to give it to yourself first, as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it just comes back to what you said earlier about accepting yourself, loving yourself first, because understanding love is really to understand yourself. I truly believe if we cannot understand ourselves or love ourselves, it's how do we know we're giving love to others, or how do you even
Mm-hmm.
know what that feels like, right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's a piece of advice or mindset shift that changed everything for you? Or
Mm-hmm. Um, hmm. So, some life mottos I have that I hold because they were mindset shifts.
Mhm.
One was, life begins at the edge of your comfort zone. It's a quote that I saw and I was like, yes. Um, Another is that the pain always ends, right? So needing to shift my mindset of, it's always going to be this way. And it's like, actually, things always change because
Right.
I'm changing. And so that willingness to grow. Actually, this quote here, it's like the whole stay manifesto. And that's something that I've brought with me like through all the journeys that I've been on. And it's just about like living life. And yeah, so I think it's important to kind of keep coming back to those pieces of trust and
Right.
um, yeah.
And based off your experience,
Mm-hmm.
if you could give one message, to someone who feels stuck or unfulfilled or just in the lowest of lows right now, like what would that message be?
Mm, it's not going to last forever. But regardless of what kind of low it is and what kind of belief is coming up for you, that you have so much value and worth right where you are, right as you are. You have value and worth. I strongly believe that. I've had to work really hard to understand that in myself. And when we're in those places, we are hating ourselves so much.
Right.
And like, find your people who can hold that truth for you, um, because it is true. There's no questions around it.
And how did you come to believe that about yourself?
Hmm. A lot of work. A lot of work. Um, yeah. Um, a lot of self work in terms of, because I don't want to, sometimes we make it sound easy, right?
Right.
And I always don't want to, I wish everything was so easy. And I know it can be, and having support from others. So my current counselor that I have, because I think we should always have counselors. We should always have people that can hold that space for us, especially when we have these times where we falter. But you have to find ones that are right for you. And I have this one, and that has been one of our biggest pieces. We've been doing a bit of EMDR around it.
Mhm.
And I've done lots of like parts work and somatic practices to um, understand that, and feel, even feel in my system that I have these parts that are good. I am a good person. And it took me a while to believe deep inside that I'm not a bad person, and things
Right.
happen and there are parts of me that are challenging. But I do still have value and worth. Even when I'm messy and gross, those are just parts that need some love and need some time. And um, but my wholeness of who I am is worthy. And it took a long time. Like, it's been the last few years. So I really do believe it's a journey.
It's yeah, and you know, I'll give two examples for myself. I used to have really bad panic attacks, anxiety, many,
Mm,
many years ago, and I met this wonderful lady, Patricia Donahue. Rest in peace. She's no longer with us.
mm,
But it was, like some people view counseling, such a negative, but she was had such a large impact in my life in terms of
mm,
just, sharing with me and helping me understand, how our thoughts control our feelings, and feelings control everything else, and just how to interpret that without, going on medication or stuff. And it's just such a large impact in my life. And then I also want to allude to my introduction to you, because we kind of
mm,
met just by chance, just going
mhm,
through the journey now. And, and I'm sharing this story because some of the best advice will come from people you just don't expect it to come from. And I think it goes back to what we said about being able to be vulnerable with other people and sharing your stories. You were doing parts work with me, and you really through that process opened up my eyes in terms of understanding what love really is for me, which I couldn't. I don't know. I couldn't get that from anybody else.
mm.
And we just kind of met by chance and went through a couple of your breathwork classes and stuff like that. And then we had some conversations, and and I share that story because it doesn't have to come. The help doesn't have to come from professional, not that you're not a professional in that sense, but
Mm-hmm.
we were having a discussion outside of your breath work and stuff like that, but it can come from friends and
Mm-hmm.
chance meetings with people, right? So I think the important message there is to allow yourself to be vulnerable, talk to people, as many people as you can, and
Mm-hmm.
share your story. Um,
Yeah.
so I just want to allude to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you mentioned we're going to close it out here, so a couple, just maybe one last question, and that is, how do you, or sorry, no, do you have a favorite mantra? And I think you said it a few times already, but
Mm-hmm.
or phrase that helps capture your life's philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I said a few already. I said the life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Pain will always end. Um, but I love Ram Dass. Are you familiar with Ram Dass?
I'm not. That's a new one to me.
No. Okay. Him and Alan Watts have a lot of
Okay.
overlap. But his quote is, "We're all just walking each other home," and um, that is one that resonates as well. Yeah,
Okay.
so I really feel like we
And,
are.
and what does home mean to you now? Then what does home mean to you, or how has
Hmm.
that changed over time?
Hmm. Well, when I well, that's it's changed a lot. Because I feel like my heart is in many places, and so home is wherever my heart is. But when I think of that quote, "We're all just walking each other home," that it doesn't matter who I'm walking beside, whether it's a client, whether it's a friend, whether it's a stranger that I'm literally just having this engagement with, that we're all on this path together, whatever that might mean to you, but we're all on this path together, and we're side by side for a moment that's meant to kind of happen, and that we're just walking each other on this path home. And home to me is just kind of like our path back to highest self, or some people might say God or the universe or source or whatever that might be. But like, it's like walking our path back to home, this place of wholeness,
Right.
or this place of deepest of connection and unity that we all have. Um, and so when I think of that, um, like I always remind myself, like I don't know what anybody else's journey is supposed to be, but when I get to be next to someone, I'm like, oh, we're both walking this path right now together, and we're walking each other home. And home
Wow.
can be, I remember in this, I was a part of this Buddhist community, and we would talk about awakening, right? Everybody
Mhm.
hears about the term awakening, and that can mean different things for people, but there's many paths. Like if we're all trying to reach the mountain point, whatever that means, if we're all
Mhm.
trying to get there, but there's a bazillion paths to get there. And whatever that is to someone, um, we're all kind of walking there, and we get to walk alongside each other. And so for me, home is kind of like a deep place of
Right.
love and connection and 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 unity, like an expansive thing. Yeah, of yeah. I don't know how to describe it. I hope I'm
No,
describing it okay.
I think that's great. Listen, Alex, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. We're pretty much at the end here. For anybody that does want to follow Alex, he's at alex.tabler on Instagram. And for anybody that wants to, understand or check out a bit more about breath work, you can visit that at Breathe New Brunswick on Facebook. And I'm sure you'd be happy to explain more about that if somebody would
Hmm.
reach out to you. And again, I can speak from experience. It is a quite the experience. Again, different for everybody, but something that I highly recommend. And then again, I want to thank everybody for listening. We're live here with Studio for Good. We're bringing the podcast to you called Design Your Life. And again, it's about sharing stories about how to live a more intentional, authentic life. So I like to thanks, Alex, again for joining us, telling your story. We greatly
Hmm.
appreciate it. We appreciate you being vulnerable because I know it's hard to do.
Hmm.
But thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. And feel
Mhm.
free to visit us at Studio for Good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much and have
Thank
a
you.
great day.